If there's one thing that we love to do on the internet, especially in forums, it's to take two of our champions that are mythological or comic book or movie, and we put them in the forum section and we put them to war. The what if battles, the what if versus fights. And some of the most famous ones out there are like Superman versus the Hulk, Batman versus Wolverine, or Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan. In the martial arts community, especially in the martial arts forums, there is not one more heated what-if battle than Mike Tyson versus Bruce Lee. No comment section comes more alive than they do when it comes down to the who would win in that fight. And today we're going to take a look at that. And once and for all, after looking at skill set, background, history, attributes, fighting styles, everything you name it, we're going to declare a victor once and for all in this battle. And we're going to raise the hand of the man who would truly win in the Mike Tyson versus Bruce Lee fight. If we're going to set the stage for this fight, this what-if fight, a couple things need to be taken into account. What kind of fight is this? My suggestion is we take all the rules off the table. This way, there's no excuses whatsoever why somebody says, oh, well, he would have won because X, Y, or this, or this guy, Lee would have done this, and Tyson would have done this, but what if? So we're going to take all the rules off this table, and we're going to say it's a no-holds-barred fight. There's no rules. There's no referee. There's no equipment, no mouth guard. No, if you want to wear shoes, you can. If you don't, you don't. If you wear shoes, you can still kick to the head. It doesn't make a difference. I don't care if you want to wear jeans, whatever the case is. And we'll start this with squared up too, right? They know it's going to happen. It's not going to be done out of ambush, right? Mike Tyson isn't going to be walking in an alley and then Bruce Lee isn't going to ambush him. It's, hey, they know they're going to meet. They're going to have unlimited time, no pads, no rules, no ref, nothing. We're also going to look at their age. We're going to say 30. We're going to say who they were at 30 years old is the fighter that we're going to pick. And the reason I'm saying 30 is I look back on my life, and I don't think 30 was my prime, but it wasn't 20 and it wasn't 40. So I'm going to say 30. And we could say 30 because Bruce Lee died 2 years after he turned 30. And Tyson, so that was 1970. 1970, he was 30, and Tyson was 30 in 1996. So we're going to look at those two men at that age. So the stage being set is no rules, no holds barred, nothing. I mean, you get punched in the throat and that's it. And that's it. So we're going to look at it like that, and then specifically taking them at their ages at 30. If we're going to start, we need to start at the backgrounds of both men. And we could get involved in this as a conversation for this will be an entire podcast, if you will. I don't want to get too far into Bruce Lee or Mike Tyson's history as children, other than, or juveniles, more so to speak, other than both had a level of trouble, right? Troubled past. And it's not that who had the more trouble or who came from the bigger broken home. I think even with Bruce Lee, his lack of stability is comparable to Tyson's, right? And this is all going to be based off of the perception of the individual. It's psychology and how it helped form each person as a fighter. I think we can say with Mike Tyson, it's safe to say that losing his family, going through the gang issues, being a juvenile delinquent and a criminal, that's going to give him a mindset. And in most situations, I would say that's a hardened individual going and living with Customato, all this. And you can't take that away from Lee as well. Lee, you have to look at if the legend is true that when he was introduced to Ip Man to learn Wing Chun and they said no because you're a foreigner, that's ostracization, and it's going to make you feel a certain way. And I know that for most of us, if we're never if we're discluded from a group of our peers, it's hurtful, and we kind of get that I'll show them attitude. So I'm not going to take away from either man's background and what they went through, but I will say that both of them have a past that kind of secluded them to a degree, put them in that position to diamonds are made under hard pressure. That lump of coal either collapses and crumbles or it becomes a diamond, right? So you're looking at, these are two men who went through things in their lives where they had a troubled past as youths, as teens, and they became the warriors they were, and that has so much to do with mindset. So in the background aspect of it in history, I don't think that we need to go too far into this. So many people who are familiar with Bruce Lee and Mike Tyson, they know their background, they know their past and their history. I want to set the stage a little bit and just talk about what that could have done to give each man the fighting edge and put them in a superior mindset of nobody is ever going to wind up beating me. It creates a hunger, it creates a drive, it creates passion, and it creates a warrior. So starting with this, we have to acknowledge that both men have a background of what we could say pain. And pain is a phenomenal motivator when it comes down to forging yourself as a weapon. And that's in the gym, that's with fighting, that's with anything physical. And as men, it's a very masculine path that we take. You either, you rise to the occasion or you crumble to the pressure. And these are obviously two men who rose to the occasion. So we're going to start with not a history and background of their past, where they were born, all this, but a history and background of their pain. And I want to start there. That's the foundation of where the fighter's mindset came from and who they were. So both men, I'm going to say, have a substantial amount of pain in their background that helped make them the warriors that we're going to put in this ring for this fight, this versus fight. So pain is where we start, and they both are going to stay on the even scale for pain. And I will have that as a caveat by saying it's subjective, right? Pain is going to be completely in the eyes and the feelings and the emotions of those who experienced it. So if people are like, well, Tyson went through more than Lee did, we don't know that because we didn't walk in their shoes. So we're just going to stop and establish right off the bat that both men went through pain and helped them become who they were. If we're going to start this, we have to start with the established background of their fighting history and their martial arts, if you will, style. And one thing that is common between both these men is that they started training at a very early age, which seems to be out of necessity. Again, not getting too far back in their histories, Tyson having the troubled street past, his amateur boxing ability was discovered while he was serving time in a juvenile detention center. Ip Man was introduced to Bruce Lee in 1953, according to reports, and that's 12, 13 years of age. So both of these men were juveniles when they started their training. If we go with this base, and I know this is not meant to be a style debate or whatnot, it's just their training background. We talk about that Bruce Lee spent just a few years, 3 or 4 years, training in Wing Chun before he left and he came to America. And the concept of whether or not he came back and continue his training, it's really not important. I'm not interested in that. I'm talking about what he spent his first few years in. So we're looking at Bruce Lee enters into Wing Chun based off of whatever juvenile issues that he got involved in after being, his parents decided he needed to train in martial arts because of the street fights he was in. Mike Tyson starts boxing after being put in a juvenile detention center for street fights and other criminal activity he was in. So both these men have that similar baptism into the fighting world, which is, hey, you're full of too much piss and vinegar. You're both young men who are causing some trouble. Let's channel that energy. Now, that's where I'm going again back with the past of pain and why I think that's so important, because, you can stick a kid into anything for discipline's sake, but the catalyst of what put them in the first place That's what I'm more interested in. Was Lee and was Tyson, were they looking to wind up proving themselves among peers, other males? What were they like as younger 13-year-olds? Were they smaller than other boys? As a younger kid myself, when I got into high school, I was 5'3" on 105 pounds. So that's a small kid, and that's why I started wrestling when I was 12. So before I went into high school, I knew I was short and small at the time, so I entered something to channel that energy and to avoid mockery. So when we look at this, we know that Tyson started boxing, and it came off of street fighting, and Lee started Wing Chun, or Chinese Kung Fu, Chinese boxing, at 13, as a result of him having to channel energy from street fighting. So both these men entered into a discipline with Customato and Ip Man. So you've got two legendary teachers. So we're going to look at these. We're going to look at also the attribute of it's the teachers who wound up having the ability to cultivate and forge these raw materials of fighters as well too. So on some aspect of it, we have to ask, what influence did Ip Man and Customato have on Tyson and Lee? And I think the answer is a massive influence, and that could be later seen in certain arguments. I'm not going to get into philosophical, but we could say that without proper guidance from Lee, not having a Sifu, and then coming over to America, you're looking at, that's when he started Jeet Kune Do, and that's where he was more like, let's throw everything together and let's go off on a different version and a journey. His discipline was lacking because he didn't have a Sifu. And to be honest, if you're a man who's involved in martial arts, you know the importance of having a Sifu and that guidance. And the same thing we could say exactly, that's what happened with Customato and Tyson. When Tyson went to Don King, we know what happened there, and we know how his life kind of spiraled out of control at that point. So again, background, we have martial arts, we have structures, we have boxing, we have Wing Chun. Both of them are going to be more of boxing, definitely. You're looking at a fist art, and you're looking at Lee, who start Wing Chun, let's say 60-40 or 70-30 hands versus kicking art, and that's where that at is. Now, the brilliance of both men is they have the ability to take those arts, strip away the unessentials, take off the gloves, so to speak, and make them fit into play. A good reference, so to speak, is Rocky V. Although it's cheesy of a movie, if you remember the last scene in Rocky V, he starts street fighting with Tommy Gunn. He doesn't box him, he street fights him. So you can't necessarily take a boxer and turning them into a street fighter, but you could take a street fighter, turn him into a boxer, and he's still a street fighter, right? So you have to look at it that way. The background of these men with their pain pasts, the triggering, what put them into these structured positions, those are the fighters that we want to unleash at the end in the versus bout and really have come to life. So we have boxing, we have Wing Chun or Chinese boxing. Later then a style developed, which was not supposed to be a style, but that's a topic for many other versus battles to come in forums, and that's where we're going to go at. So we're going to look at Chinese martial arts versus Western boxing, and that's what we're going into as we move forward. All right, as we go into this, let's start looking at the basic stats, because you're going to have to size these guys up, right? This is not an even fight. This is no holds barred, is what it is. So you're looking at Tyson in his prime is said to be 5 feet 11 inches. It's in height, and weighing about 218 pounds. And it's said that in his prime, Bruce Lee was 5'7" and 135 to 140 pounds. So that's where we're going to start off with those two, right? Their height and their weight, there's difference. Reach-wise, I didn't get into the reach-wise, but I just want to look at the mass, the sheer mass of the person and the build. When we look at their build as well, we do know that Lee was very much into physical fitness, lifting weights, calisthenics. I believe Tyson was probably much more functional movement and training, right? I don't believe that, even though he looks like he was built well, that doesn't look like too much too much weight training. I believe it was weight training that was just done to get the job done for the boxing purposes. When it comes down to Lee, I think Lee was far more into his athleticism. I'm going to go with an unpopular belief. I believe Tyson's core strength was, it's going to piss some of you off. I think Tyson's core strength, based on his peekaboo style and the power he was able to generate with his hits, I think Tyson's core strength was superior to Lee's. I really do. And that could have just been a couple decades past, and now we're looking at training is different. I think Lee's, do not get me wrong, Lee's core strength was phenomenal. And if you're doing Wing Chun and you understand Wing Chun, you understand where your power comes from, and you deliver it with that inch power. So I'm going to give the edge only because, and this is my only reason why, because I've seen the application in the peekaboo style and the devastation it did on opponents. We didn't get to see that with Lee. You only got to see it done on heavy bags, or you never got to see it in a live fight. So what we're looking at is, I think that in application force, right, the acceleration of mass, I think based on that alone, Tyson's core strength, I think I'm going to say, was more powerful than Lee's was. So that's the tail of the tape with height and weight and mass. We need to talk about the physical attributes that are involved in a fight, right? So we need speed and strength and durability and elusiveness and stamina, everything out there. And for the most part, let's not mince words and let's be very black and white. Bruce Lee's, everything that's going to be an account on Bruce Lee's fighting ability with all those attributes are going to come from students or witnesses or whatnot, and that's it. Yes, there are videos of him working on heavy bags. I love the one that says he kicked a 700-pound boxing bag, and you got James Coburn talking about the fact that he watched it. Got to remember something. Everything is sensationalized, right? I'm not taking away from his attributes, but if you look at some of the videos of Lee kicking on a bag or kicking a guy with a pad, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you something. Bruce Lee looks like a kid today who went out and got his Bruce Lee's books and then trained in his own backyard. From the training videos that are available online, Bruce Lee does not look anything special. I truly believe that if Bruce Lee were in his prime now and he lived in a time and era where everybody does now, where their stuff is documented and put up online, I think Bruce Lee would be exposed as a mediocre fighter. Not martial arts is different. There's certain things he could do that other people can't. The 2-finger push-ups, his ab control, his kicks, kicking high up to the height of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's head. There's certain athleticism that I give him that is just phenomenal. But when it comes down to his fighting ability, we have it undocumented. The Wong Jack Man fight that people think really existed, that was really glorified by the Dragon movie back in the 90s, we don't know if it really happened. And then both camps have different accounts of what happened in that, right? So I'm not impressed with what I see based off of Bruce Lee kicking a bag. He's kicking in his backyard. I think he kicks like a 70-pound bag. And then you got the urban legend of the 700-pound bag. When you look at some of the content of Bruce Lee kicking a guy who's holding a pad, you could tell that Bruce Lee's little 135-pound frame, again, he's doing that mass, or the force, right? Mass acceleration. The force is mass times acceleration. You look at, man, that guy, if it's not for structure, he's going to get knocked back on his ass. And I know that upsets a lot of people, but this helps create the legend of Bruce Lee and his fighting ability, of which, I'm sorry, there is zero documented proof. Zero documented proof. There's the one martial artist, I believe his last name is Moore, who he's been just criticized for years about not being able to stop Bruce Lee's punch at that demo they did years ago, and how he almost blocked Bruce Lee's punch. I don't fault him one bit, because A, it was a demo. B, it's a straight line attack with zero telegraph. That's going to be extremely impossible to stop because action's quicker than reaction. And if you've ever seen the Michael J. White video who's explaining that to Kimbo Slice, you understand that that's the reason why we have lights that shine up on our taillights when a car hits the brakes, because our eyes cannot perceive the incoming straight line. So it's not that Bruce Lee was just faster than normal. He knew body mechanics. He knew straight lines, all this. So if we're going to look at speed, okay, I'll give it to him. He's fast. Size, we clearly know he doesn't have that on Tyson. Strength, he's an above average human being. 135, strong. Sure, there are some feats that he could do calisthenic wise, but we've also seen those guys who do like the street and the pull-up bars, Bar Wars. It was really big on YouTube. We've seen those guys who are jacked, who could do pull-ups and dips and muscle-ups, all this. We've seen them go to the gym. They have a problem benching 135. And I know that a lot of people like, well, you don't need real strength in a fight. I'm going to tell you, that was sold by martial arts studios so that the students would never best their teachers in Sifus. So when it really comes down to this, stamina, we'll never know. We'll never know what Bruce Lee's capability was because he wasn't in a 12 and 15 round fight, right, with rounds. So we'll never know that. Speed, okay, straight line, quickness, all right, I'll give him that he has a good amount of speed based on what we've seen from demos, from martial arts demos. Durability, we'll never know. We will never know because we'll never see Lee gloved up, if anything, in a fight or bare-knuckled outside of what the legends of students say. But don't forget, those guys were also out there to wind up making money off of his name. Oh, I knew Bruce Lee. Really, you did? Here, give me money. And that's just, that's capitalism. It is what it is. Durability, we just don't know. We don't know if Bruce Lee could take a punch. We have no idea. The rumor of when he went back to Wang Shengliang, because it's almost on the same level of accountability. We don't have videos, to my knowledge, of Wang Shengliang fighting, but, he was king of the talking hands. He was, they had a mutual respect for each other. We don't know if behind closed doors, those two men went at it and knocked each other around and what their durability was. So when it comes to Lee and the fact that durability, speed, size, the fighting attributes, we just don't know, because everything Lee did that is documented and provable is in a controlled environment that is a demo or is a heavy bag. That's it. And that's a sad fact a lot of people have to keep in mind. The bottom line, we don't know if Bruce Lee had a glass jaw or not. We don't know. And the argument is going to be, well, you could never hit him because he's too elusive. You could never hit him because he's too fast. Okay, but what if you did? What if you did? Right? So that's where we have to look at this one. It's going to be complete conjecture and assumed. I want to believe that if it was the case and Lee did train as hard as he did and he did take hits, I think that maybe he would be a formidable fighter, right? So let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say he built his body. He did aggressive chisao. He did no glove sparring. He did do some fighting, behind closed doors. Let's say that, okay, then I'm going to say, all right, then maybe he's durable, he's quick, strength-wise, it's calisthenic based, punching and kicking a 700-pound bag. I think that would break his knee if he really did. I think James Coburn just exaggerated and sensationalized it, but I think what we have here is we have mostly legend, and sadly, if this was today, Bruce Lee would be exposed for being a mediocre fighter. He'd be a demo martial artist, but he'd be a mediocre fighter, and the world would see that. And it just, the best thing was the video camera was really not popular during his time. So if we're moving on and talking about the same aspects, the durability, the stamina, the strength, the speed for fighting attributes, I mean, it's all over the internet from Mike Tyson. And for those of us who remember watching it, we remember being really pissed off for pay-per-view and the first round knockouts. And it was just, damn. Okay, that was quick. There's just non-stop documented proof of Tyson, both inside and, sadly, outside of the ring. He could blacken somebody's eye if they pissed him off outside of a bar. But when it comes to his mental game, we did see that Tyson did lose his cool a couple times. I think that when he came out of prison, I believe he fought Frank Bruno in 1996. And that's when he was 30. So he's 30 in 1996, gets out of prison. We always wonder what would have happened if he never went in, right? Would he have continued on the path? Did prison calm him and make him more focused of a fighter? I don't know. I have no idea. But when he came out and he just beat the living crap out of Frank Bruno, we knew he was back, right? So you also look at aspects like Lennox Lewis, when he fought Lennox Lewis. Yeah, Tyson was 35 years old. The jab kept him at bay. So, all right, could Lee keep him at bay with a jab if that was the strategy, right? If Lee had known about that. Lennox Lewis was also, he was taller, had a longer reach than Tyson. So we're going to look at tools like that. But ultimately, going back to the concept, this is a much shorter take on this. The video evidence is out there. Tyson went the distance. A lot of times in the beginning, we didn't know if he could because he was knocking guys out in the first round. So could Tyson go 5-6 rounds or whatnot? When he lost his fight the first time in Japan to Buster Douglas, I mean, yeah, that was one of the mental times he kind of lost it. He wasn't in it, but we just saw Tyson going and getting knocked out. So he wasn't infallible, right? He wasn't invincible. He was 56-1 is his fighting record, but the guy was a wrecking machine, man. He did take some hits from people out there. He fought some brutal powerhouses that really, he hit. He's just a wrecking machine, man. The guy was a bulldozer. He was quick. He was fast, that peekaboo style, the core control. Mike Tyson was just feared in the ring, and he had the ability to back it up. So when it comes to this, I mean, in my opinion, the fight that I would have loved to see, that it would have taken place where Tyson didn't go to prison. He stayed away from Don King, and it would have been Holyfield Tyson untainted by prison, untainted by Don King. That, in my opinion, that a Holyfield Tyson before, let's just say 96, let's just say mid to late 20s, that would have been the test. That would have been the ultimate test, because if Tyson would have beaten Holyfield back then, man, I would have said Tyson's unbeatable. Holyfield, I don't know, it's a different story entirely. That guy's he was just a friggin' amazing fighter and boxer. But when it comes down to speed, Tyson's got it. Strength, we've seen it. Tyson's got it. Durability, Tyson's got it. Elusiveness, quickness, the skills, the tactics, Tyson's got it. It's all on video. You don't really need to say much more out of it. So when it comes to this, yeah, Tyson is the superior fighter. He's the superior fighter between Bruce Lee and himself, and there's documented proof. And the bottom line, when you separate fiction versus truth, and the fact of the reality is Mike Tyson wins, hands down. And I know that upsets a lot of people, but with 73% of the people polled stating that Mike Tyson would win, I have to agree with them. And there's a lot of people with some great comments who talk about what they think would happen as far as Tyson's skill set versus Lee's skill set. And here, the great comments out there. Bruce Lee in his prime would make a fool of Mike Tyson. Remember, Bruce Lee had the experience of knowing what would work under various situations with various opponents in various styles, weight classes. Mike Tyson is, at his prime, a boxer and not a mixed martial artist. And despite his size and tenacity, he would lose. Sadly, that is a factually inaccurate statement that the world of fantasy martial arts has created with Bruce Lee and the idolization of him. There is no documented proof anywhere outside of legend and stories that Mike Tyson was a fighter. And Mike Tyson, you see his bulldozing style coming in. Bruce Lee, who was infamous for gaining distance and bringing back speed and almost negating the exact training that Wing Chun teaches everybody, would be trampled over when it came down to Mike Tyson progressing in. We're also looking at the fact this is a bare knuckle fight. We don't know what the terrain is. We don't know what kind of shoes or bare feet or whatever, Lee's going to lose or where to lose. But the bottom line is, I'm sorry. I know this is going to burst a lot of people's bubbles, but Bruce Lee does not win in a fight versus Mike Tyson. It is not possible in this realm. And sadly, I know it's going to hurt a lot of feelings out there. But as fun as this was to break this down, and it will always be a part of the martial arts forums debate, I think that there's only one thing that we could wind up still saying in this, and that's not for us to say. We'll leave it up to Mike Tyson himself. Sadly, Bruce Lee isn't alive, and we never know what he would say, but I'm sure that he would say that he would win. But at least we can get a good laugh and a good support out of Mike Tyson all these years later, having some fun when the question is posed to him.
The Dan Lebichard show recently, and they asked me, in his prime, who would have won in a no-holds-barred fight, Mike Tyson or Bruce Lee? I picked you. Was I right?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Was I right or was I wrong?
Hey, I like to think you're right, too. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, listen. If Bruce Lee really could beat me in a fight, I would really think, fuck, this is an interesting world, because that should not happen.